Fallout 4's Far Harbor is arguably the most morally challenging questline in the entire game, with various combinations and outcomes for determining the fates of each of the island's three factions: Acadia, Far Harbor, and the Children of Atom. In this video, we're looking into every aspect of Far Harbor's potential endings and exploring the effects of each choice in order to determine which overall is best. So grab some Radaway and get ready to venture into the fog. Down at the bottom, probably the worst outcome to the Far Harbor DLC involves telling the Brotherhood of Steel, or the Institute, about Acadia. After discovering the settlement of escaped Institute synths living high above the fog, provided we're already allied with the Institute or Brotherhood, we can do something pretty evil. Reporting to Captain Kells on the Pridwen, or Dr. Mosley in the Institute's advanced systems, both will be concerned to learn of Acadia. For the Institute, this is of course a massive synth reacquisition project, arguably the biggest ever, whilst for the Brotherhood, it's a potentially growing threat comprised of the very things they swore to destroy. Now, quick word of advice: if you do want to do either of these, then I'd recommend making sure to join both the Brotherhood and Institute before heading to Far Harbor for the first time. Personally, I had issues with Dr. Mosley spawning by joining up with the Institute later, but with that done, whilst you can report the existence of the refuge at any time, both factions will say they need to prepare for the long trip up north, delaying the quest until after we recover DiMA's memories and unearth the body of the real Captain Avery, basically ensuring we reach a point to resolve the Far Harbor and Nucleus conflict before wiping out Acadia. But we'll come back to those options. So with either of our decided factions now ready to head to Far Harbor, we can liaise with them on the west side of the island, triggering a raid on Acadia, which realistically is more a massacre of innocents who can barely defend themselves. Not the proudest fight by any means. In the case of the Brotherhood, it's complete annihilation, limbs flying everywhere, classic bloody Fallouts. The Institute is a little more reserved though, incapacitating the synths before teleporting them away, because they are, at least in their eyes, Institute property, after all. In both events, the settlement is now left empty, and we are subsequently unable to broker any peace between Far Harbor and the Children of Atom. Now, the only way to complete the DLC is by destroying at least one of them. We also lose the option of telling Far Harbor the truth that Captain Avery is a synth replacement, nor can we extort money from the fake captain anymore to keep her secrets, a cruel but lucrative option that we had before. Overall, this choice to involve the Commonwealth factions, whilst it's cool that it exists, it feels as though it cuts the DLC a little short, denying a proper resolution to the otherwise self-contained events. Plus, unlike other options, we don't net any rewards in the case of unique gear. However, there is one interesting confirmation we can learn via these endings. Kasumi Nakano, the girl we originally came to Far Harbor to find, the girl that fled her family home believing herself to be a synth replacement, well, it turns out she probably isn't. Upon massacring all the synths in this place, each will hold a lootable synth component, an item that Kasumi specifically does not possess when we kill her. Now, believe what you will about synths possessing souls, but this raid, therefore, also involves the death of a definitive human. And, if you wanted even more proof, if doing the Institute path, we can even question Mosley on Kasumi, who confirms that no such synth exists in their records. So I'm not 100%, but thanks to this ending, we can be almost certain that Kasumi is human, giving more weight to us telling her that in alternative timelines. Also, provided we resolve the conflict between Atom and Far Harbor before raiding Acadia, then it's possible to send Kasumi home first before reporting to the Brotherhood or Institute, still destroying Acadia but keeping her alive. Sadly though, on returning to her after this, she doesn't give any comments on the deaths of her friends. However, if you think Acadia does deserve to be destroyed, there's a slightly more dignified and much more rewarding way to go about it. Now, when I say dignified, perhaps I mean more justified. You see, progressing the Far Harbor questline to uncover DiMA's memories, we learn that he replaced a citizen of Far Harbor with an unwitting synth doppelganger, programmed to believe the synths aren't inherently evil and keep the local populace from attacking Acadia. Unfortunately, in attempting to prove that synths aren't all bad, DiMA did something very bad indeed. He murdered the original Captain Avery, buried her under the Vim Pop Factory, Avery, and sent in a replacement who has no idea she's a synth, but I guess has a warmer predisposition towards synth kind. And for the last however many years, Far Harbor has been living under this lie. However, perhaps we shouldn't forget that the only reason they've been living at all is thanks to Acadia's provision of fog condensers around the town. Without Acadia, DiMA explains, these would eventually break and the town would be overrun sooner or later. So keep that in mind as it's kind of important to this ending. You see, upon learning what DiMA did to Avery, there are two direct resolutions. Convincing DiMA to confess to Far Harbor is one that we'll come back to higher up the list, but first let's look at the option to tell Far Harbor ourselves. Specifically, telling Alan Lee, arguably the most close-minded, hot-headed resident in town. A man who killed Children of Atom missionaries to instigate all the rising tensions in the first place. Though at least when we show him the skull of Captain Avery, he does have the sense to demand a little more proof, not merely accepting that mainlanders supposedly brandishing the skulls of his fellow citizens is a solid basis to go on a massacre. But with DNA confirmation from Dr. Teddy Wright, we have all the proof Alan needs. Bearing in mind Teddy specifically begs us not to tell Alan because he wants to avoid as much bloodshed as possible. But choosing to completely ignore that request, Alan will confront the not Avery synth, and I think by this point on this timeline, it's time to go full evil mode.
She's just a dirty synth. Kill it.
See? See, the mainlander gets it. First things first.
After this, things quickly escalate, and a slightly amusing thing here is just how rapidly the citizens of Far Harbor turn into violent killing machines, immediately laying in to another synth resident, Brooks, who honestly I didn't think they even knew about. Anyway, after this, it takes a similar path to the Brotherhood and Institute endings, only this time we're storming Acadia with the citizens of Far Harbor. There's no option to send Kasumi home prior to this, I don't think, so that's a bit of a downer to this ending, but we do get a unique weapon from Alan, the lever action rifle, Lucky Eddie, which, only whenever equipped mind you, will increase our luck by 2. More importantly though, we get the Destroyer of Acadia perk, which increases our damage output by 4 when we fall below 20% health, about a quarter of the time. A last stand sort of thing, and something we don't get when doing this with the Brotherhood or the Institute. So, if you're going to destroy Acadia, it's probably definitely best done with these guys. Though again, doing this, we're still forced to choose between the Children of Atom and Far Harbor. And by this point, it may seem logical to stick with Far Harbor, but remember that Acadia was maintaining the fog condensers over the long term. And although it won't happen in our game, Alan, in his small-minded rashness, has ultimately doomed his town to the fog. And really, by siding with the Children of Atom now, we're only hastening the inevitable by this point. The town has, thanks to us, already doomed itself. Equally, if you just want to watch the world burn, it's all too possible to both set off the nuke in Atom's submarine and shut off the turbines powering Far Harbor's fog condensers. Doing one first, then visiting their rival to net the rewards before destroying them too, is probably the best order in which to do this, but hey, this decision is well beyond the point of sanity. We'll look more at the specific effects of destroying each later, but the main difference with destroying both is the reaction of Acadia, if Acadia's still standing by this point. Now, DiMA is understandably pretty pissed off at this. I mean, DiMA does have his own demons, but fair enough, he did try to do the best thing for everyone. Our unwarranted destruction of everything, though, is, well, unwarranted. And again, at this point, we might as well go full crazy evil mode, threatening to destroy Acadia as well, which, with the help of the Brotherhood or Institute, is perfectly possible. Unfortunately, DiMA is no longer available to react once we also do that one. Though I've got to say, my favourite dialogue with him, after destroying either or both of the factions, is this.
I had nothing to do with it.
Please, don't insult me. I know it was you.
And I wish that there was a speech check on that to just make DiMA believe us. Though even more chaotically funny is the sarcastic response we can give Kasumi.
I can't hear you over the sound of how satisfying it was to kill them all.
Nothing phases you, does it? It's all just one big joke.
Look, say what you will about the limitations of the voiced protagonist, but I do love these chaotic, almost self-aware, evil player lines sometimes. But with both factions gone, there's little left to do on this island, and should we also destroy Acadia, there'll be even less. Now, hats off to Far Harbor for making this an option for how to end things, but obviously it's just a ridiculously evil and bad way to end the DLC in terms of locking us out of most of the remaining content. Still, I guess that means our settlements are now in charge of the island. If you still want to make an evil decision, but a less chaotic one, then you could instead just destroy Far Harbor, a task that's all too easy thanks to DiMA's precautionary failsafe built into the wind turbines. And in fairness, even if you're planning to leave Far Harbor be, it's still worth venturing down here. There's some assaultrons with high quality junk, as well as several chests of good loot. But mainly, there's the terminal with the power to destroy an entire town. And no sooner have we done it, are the citizens of Far Harbor magically aware that it was us. And returning to the town with the fog condensers down, the citizens may well be fighting off all manner of monsters, but that isn't going to stop them trying to take revenge on us too. Though much like Acadia, it's mostly just a mindless massacre of weak enemies. And after it's done, Far Harbor is left a barren, burning ruin, overrun with fog crawlers and gulpers. And our ex-follower Longfellow will also be hostile if we return to his cabin, and with his last breath will tragically say this:
Bury me with a bottle.
And if we didn't convince Uncle Ken to return to Far Harbor, then he too will be hostile. As for Acadia, DiMA will again want nothing to do with us, and we can simply justify our actions by proclaiming glory to Atom. Indeed, this ending is kind of cool for anybody wanting to roleplay as a member of the Church of Atom, and at least ending the DLC with them on side does net us some cool rewards still. Firstly, the Atom's Bulwark armor, which provides increased damage resistance in accordance with how high our rads are, as well as the Inquisitor of Atom perk, which increases our weapon damage, again in accordance with our rads. 10% damage per 100 rads. So why side with the Children of Atom over Far Harbor though? The radiation-based perks and equipment are cool, but using them properly severely limits our health pool. As for the settlement of the Nucleus, we could, like with Far Harbor and Acadia, complete pretty much all their available side quests before killing them. Also, the citizens of Far Harbor definitely didn't want to die, and being torn apart by monsters of the fog is a nasty way to go. The Nucleus at least can be encouraged to die willingly, a fact that merely reinforces their craziness, but we'll come back to that. One thing I do really like about the Nucleus as a location though is the atmosphere, the monastic chanting and unnerving whispers which wouldn't feel out of place in an Elder Scrolls game. And this speech, given by High Confessor Tactus after the destruction of Far Harbor, does sound pretty badass.
Gone is that seething cauldron of desecration, washed clean at last. Today, brothers and sisters, Far Harbor's streets run thick with fog, thanks to our champion.
With Far Harbor gone, the fog can spread across the entire land. The children can get what they want and enjoy still existing in the irradiated wastes. And if you would like to further enjoy the irradiated wastes even when not playing or now watching Fallout, then let me draw your attention briefly to Displate, the company who sell high-quality metal posters that are very easy to fit and align thanks to their magnetic mounting system. They have a huge collection of awesome-looking Fallout art, including this one of Far Harbor, as well as stuff from Cyberpunk and plenty of other fandoms too. So check them out through my link below, where anything you do buy will be directly supporting this channel. Backtracking to the what to do about DiMA conundrum though, and a more interesting alternative to going behind his back and telling on him is with a high enough charisma and a bit of luck to convince DiMA to head down to Far Harbor and tell the truth himself. Pay for the crime of killing an innocent woman, but hopefully prevent Acadia from paying with him. And so, this machine man explains what he did, much to the shock of the town, and this, once again, causes Alan to pipe up, encouraging the annihilation of Acadia, but this time actually providing us options to save the synth refuge.
Every time you open your damn mouth, Alan, the whole town suffers.
Shut up.
And something to note, even if we fail the dialogue check, provided we've completed enough side quests in Far Harbor, the town will still take our side, making it far easier to save Acadia.
See the hull? That's thanks to the mainlander, a true friend of the harbor.
You going to listen to Alan's hate-mongering? You even remember who did the captain's dance?
But whilst our actions are enough to save the innocent synths, DiMA, in this case, is forced to pay with his synthetic life, executed on the spot by the order of the very synth he planted in the town. A synth who, in this case, is still blissfully unaware of her true nature. Back at Acadia, things can continue as usual, and Kasumi from this point can make the decision as to whether to return home or not. Mostly upset at the loss of DiMA is Faraday, who explains not understanding the point of Acadia now with its founder gone. Fortunately, with Faraday still alive in this case though, it seems someone will still be able to maintain the fog condensers, so at least Acadia haven't inadvertently doomed themselves this time. Also, if we've convinced Nick Valentine to accept his brother DiMA and make more of an effort, he'll now be a little upset that we've gotten his newfound brother killed. And for the first time, choosing the sarcastic option actually made me feel really bad.
On the bright side, you get to continue your "alas, I'm the only prototype synth" routine.
You know, why don't you just shut the hell up for once? I swear you care more about sounding smart sometimes than you do about who has to listen to it.
I mean, he's right, and I'm so sorry, Nick. Doing it this way, though, will again lock us out of the Reformation quest, preventing us from brokering a peaceful solution between the Children of Atom and Far Harbor, and forcing us, once again, to choose a side. Personally, I think this is the best instance in which to nuke the Children of Atom, but we'll get to that next. First, let's look a bit more at DiMA's character, because whilst this is by no means the best ending to Far Harbor in terms of the preservation of NPCs and locations to maintain the maximum level of content, this resolution is on some level a more justified and fair one. Looking at DiMA, he really isn't a good man, synthetic man. And right back to the moment we meet him, he questions the nature of our existence.
Tell me, are you a synth?
And this weirdly uses the nature of the game against us, what with our first memory being the game's prologue. And apparently, canonically, Nate or Nora remember nothing before this. It's an interesting theory to maybe get into in another video, but the main point to note here are the immediate gaslighting techniques DiMA springs on us, forcing us to ponder an unanswerable question, using our own trauma against us in an attempt to gain some loyalty. And whilst this doesn't particularly matter to us, it begs the question as to why Kasumi believed she was a synth in the first place. No doubt, if DiMA sprang these questions on somebody more mentally vulnerable, it could have a more damaging effect. Kasumi is convinced that she's a synth, even though all evidence says that she isn't. Therefore, I can only blame this unfaltering resolve on DiMA's recruitment techniques, which begins to paint a picture of Acadia being more cult-like than it seems. Or at any rate, DiMA being more like a cult leader. A leader who'll inflict smaller evils on the few for the overall good of his pack. After all, despite DiMA's quote-unquote good intentions for everyone, confiscating the nuclear launch key so the Children of Atom don't kill themselves, as well as installing a failsafe to destroy Far Harbor in case of, well, just in case, he did, amongst all this, murder an innocent woman in cold blood, burying the body in an unmarked grave and replacing her so nobody was any the wiser. Over the years, the real Avery rotted away and may well never have been found. Hell, even doing it this way, keeping her identity secret for the sake of synth Avery, that's still an unknown murder for nobody to mourn. Was it necessary to broker peace between all three factions? Was DiMA justified in taking one innocent life to maintain peace between the rest? And even if he technically saved more lives through her sacrifice, the act of wiping his own memory to avoid suffering through the guilt is, well, selfish and cowardly. A machine man with a cold enough mind to make the hard, logical choice, yet also cursed with the human shortcomings of feeling bad about it. I mean, it's real tough, this one, especially given DiMA's trial and punishment precipitates the deaths of an entire another faction of people. He may not deserve to live for what he did, but to secure the best outcome, he still kind of needs to. But personally, I'm partial to ending things this way. It feels more gritty and real, and I find the best thing to follow it up with is this. Of the two human factions to inhabit the island, the Children of Atom are objectively the more evil of the two. Upon our first arrival there, we literally witnessed two of them pitted against each other and told they must kill the other in order to prove their faiths. It's a cult of crazy chanting zealots way too overconfident in their understanding of particle physics, believing that inside each atom are infinite other worlds, and that their ultimate goal should be division, the splitting of atoms. Radiation is a blessing that comes as the result of this, and Far Harbor's repelling of the radioactive fog is an obstacle to Atom's will. We've talked about siding with them and the rewards for doing so, but out of them and Far Harbor, Atom's children are the only one who can be convinced into willingly getting annihilated. You see, triggering the unlaunchable nuke in their ruined submarine will blow the whole place to pieces, permanently locking it from the game. We can do this anytime once we recover the key, but doing so unannounced will give us about 30 seconds to fight through the new hostile zealots and escape the bunker. However, provided we've completed some side quests for them beforehand, or just have a high enough charisma, it is possible to convince Tectus to detonate the sub willingly, explaining that this literally is the division they all crave, and that as a quote-unquote messenger of Atom, we have been sent to fulfill that. It takes an unnervingly small amount of convincing before Tectus excitedly instructs us to get on with it, and this in fact was why DiMA hid the key in the first place. He was terrified that Tectus' predecessor, Confessor Martin, would willingly attempt the same thing and destroy the Children of Atom, a faction that DiMA himself has grown fond of after they actually accepted him onto the island. With the Nucleus finally being destroyed though, DiMA will once again be understandably upset. Even if we say division is what they wanted, he'll still call us out for not embracing division ourselves. But, unlike Far Harbor, he won't remain permanently mad at us. That's even if he's still alive at this point. Like I said, I feel the most poetic ending to Far Harbor is to make him face his crimes and then convince the Nucleus to embrace division. And the citizens of Far Harbor themselves, whilst trying to act upset at all the lives lost, are no doubt slightly relieved that the biggest threat to their way of life on the island is no more. We'll also receive the perk Far Harbor Survivalist, granting +5 to our resistances permanently. And speaking to Alan Lee after destroying the Nucleus, he's understandably more chuffed than most. So grateful in fact that he'll gift us a very nice bonus of 1600 caps. Do the Children of Atom then really deserve to all die? And does it matter whether in the end they embrace that willingly, utterly convinced it's the right thing by their misguided understanding of science? Is the island a safer place with them gone, or is it no less evil really than blowing up Megaton? I think the answer is down to your personal interpretation, so please discuss your thoughts in the comments below. Personally, I think DiMA facing justice and the Children of Atom dying from their own stupidity is a weirdly, darkly satisfying ending, with everybody getting what they want / possibly deserve in a weird, twisted, Fallout kind of way. But there is of course one more ending, not perfect in its entirety, but without a doubt the most peaceful overall. Reformation, an end quest only unlocked after promising DiMA that we'll keep his secrets, and the only means through which Far Harbor and the Children of Atom can perpetually coexist. The means of achieving it, however, merely involves furthering the immoral subterfuge that DiMA has already carried out. Only this time, we're also complacent, or rather instrumental, in bringing everything about. DiMA explains that much like he did with Avery, his plan now is similarly to replace the Children of Atom's leader with an unwitting synth copy. And I guess if DiMA, a machine, logically arrived at this solution before, it kind of makes sense he should only do so again. Not at all answering for any of his crimes, but merely committing more of them. In this case, the idea is for us to lure High Confessor Tectus to a secluded location using a fabricated voice note from the previous High Confessor, then murder him and hide the body. Before sending us on this quest though, DiMA will first provide us with Arcadia's unique rewards. Arcadia's shield is a unique armor piece which buffs our agility, endurance, and intelligence stats by 1 each. Probably a more passively useful piece than Atom's bulwark unless you love getting irradiated, though if things go right, we'll also get that one through this ending. First things first though, we have to deal with the real Tectus. And actually, strangely, we don't necessarily have to kill him. This carefully bricked up wall is both impressive and terrifying, knowing Tectus will probably never be found, but we can, with a a pretty low charisma check, simply convince him to run away, telling him it's that or death. I find it kind of hard to believe that Tectus will never return and resume all the trouble that's been being caused, but at least this way it's an entire ending requiring no more blood to be spilled. Telling DiMA that we did it this way though, he isn't entirely pleased.
I convinced him to leave the island and never return.
You did. Perhaps not an ideal resolution, but I suppose the end result is the same.
Now, it's easy to forget sometimes that DiMA is practically a machine, but I think cold decisions and statements like this do begin to blur the line between pragmatic human and machine man. Logically though, he has made the right choice, even if we killed Tectus in the grand balance of life and death. Take out one man with utter certainty, as opposed to take out that man anyway and his entire congregation, or alternatively a mostly innocent town of people. And in the overall picture, DiMA is annoyingly right, in a situation no less where there isn't a definitively good outcome either way. We can justifiably call him a monster, but maybe sometimes a monster is exactly what we need to make the tough choices that nobody else could. He may deserve to face consequences for the 2 crimes he's committed now, but can't do so without others also facing death. So, with this quest done then, we'll receive the Protector of Acadia perk, with a chance to grant a huge 1000 damage and energy resistance when we drop below 20% health. Kind of a mirror to the Destroyer of Acadia perk. And so, for the remainder of our time in the Wasteland at least, this is the only truly peaceful outcome. To continue the lies and deception underpinning Far Harbor, further it into the confines of the Nucleus, and, with synth doppelgangers in both camps, enable a more stable peace, for now. But that begs the question as to how long the peace will remain for this time. How long until another resident like Alan Lee stirs things up, or another mainlander comes and uncovers the dirty web of lies all over again? How many more people would DiMA have to replace with synths in this case, swapping out the powerful but troublesome to nurture perfect but fabricated peace? This ending may be the best for us as players in the short term, but maybe on a longer scale, it's simply best to purge one or more of the warring factions entirely, diffusing the threat of tensions arising again. And I think that's why, whilst this ending is objectively best, I still have a soft spot for DiMA turning himself in and the Children of Atom embracing division. It's a more human response, I think, than the cold, calculated plan of DiMA's, even if it's less rewarding overall. But let me know in the comments what your favourite ending or combination of ending components are your favourite in Far Harbor and why. I've also done a breakdown of the endings of the main questline if you want to check that out next, but otherwise, huge thank you as always to the patrons for keeping the channel alive. Thank you for watching, I'm Sam Bram, and I'll see you in the next one.